When I look back now, I realize that one small moment, a knock on a door, completely changed the direction of my life. It was the summer before my senior year of high school in Seattle, Washington, and life felt messy, uncertain, and heavier than I was ready to handle. My best friend Ethan Parker lived 2 blocks away. His home was like a second home to me, filled with warmth, laughter, and the smell of fresh-baked cookies. His mom, Mrs. Parker, was one of those people who seemed to have life all figured out, calm voice, kind eyes, and a smile that made any bad day easier. That day, though, I wasn't going to see Ethan. He had gone on a camping trip with his dad, and I had something else on my mind, something I hadn't told anyone about. My father had recently lost his job, and my mom was struggling to keep up with bills. Tension filled our house like thick fog, and every conversation turned into an argument. I needed help, not money, but advice. And the only person who came to mind was Mrs. Parker. So that afternoon, I walked down Maple Avenue, hands in my pockets, trying to gather the courage to knock. When I finally did, the door opened slowly, and there she was, wearing a simple cardigan, her hair tied back, eyes widening in surprise when she saw me. "Lucas, is everything okay?" she asked, noticing my pale face. I hesitated, then nodded weakly. "Yeah, I needed to talk. Is that okay?" Her expression softened. "Of course. Come in, honey." Inside, the familiar scent of cinnamon and vanilla filled the air. She guided me to the living room and poured me a cup of lemonade before sitting across from me. I didn't realize how heavy my chest had felt until that moment. I told her everything, about my dad losing his job, about the arguments at home, about how I felt invisible in my own house. Mrs. Parker listened without interrupting once. No judgment, no pity, just quiet understanding. When I finished, she leaned forward slightly and said, "Lucas, you don't have to carry that kind of weight alone. You're young, but you're not powerless. Have you talked to your parents about how you feel?" I shook my head. "They're too busy fighting." "Then maybe what they need is to hear from you," calmly, she said. "You might be surprised how much your words matter." Something about her tone, steady and full of belief, made me feel stronger. For the first time in months, I felt seen. That evening, I helped her carry some groceries inside and stayed a while longer. She told me stories about when Ethan was younger, how even the toughest moments passed if you faced them together. By the time I left, the sunset had painted the sky orange and gold, and I felt a little lighter. Over the next few weeks, I started visiting the Parkers more often. Sometimes Ethan was there, sometimes he wasn't. But Mrs. Parker always welcomed me in. We'd talk about school, future plans, and sometimes even about life in general, things no one else cared to ask me. She once said, "People think strength means not breaking. But real strength is about healing after you do." Those words stuck with me. Then, one afternoon in late August, she called me unexpectedly. "Lucas, could you come over for a moment? I need some help with the fence." When I arrived, she handed me gloves and pointed to a loose wooden board. We spent the next hour fixing it together, laughing when the hammer slipped from my hand and nearly hit the ground. When it was done, she smiled and said, "See, teamwork always fixes things faster." Something about that simple act, repairing something broken, felt symbolic. Maybe I couldn't fix my family's problems overnight, but I could start piece by piece. That night, I sat my parents down and told them how I felt, about the silence, the tension, and how much it hurt to see them drift apart. They listened. My mom cried. My dad apologized. It wasn't perfect, but it was the beginning of something better. Weeks passed, and life began to settle again. Ethan came back from his trip, and school started soon after. I got a part-time job at a local bookstore, and my dad eventually found work again. Things weren't magical, but they were improving, because I'd learned to open doors too, not just wait for someone else to do it. One evening, as I was leaving their house, Mrs. Parker stopped me at the door. "Lucas," she said softly, "I'm proud of you. You faced what scared you, and you didn't run away. That's rare." I smiled. "You helped me more than you know." She looked thoughtful for a moment. "You know what's funny? Sometimes we think we're helping someone else, but they end up reminding us of hope. So thank you, too. I didn't realize it then, but that conversation would stay with me for years. 5 years later, I was standing on the same porch again, this time in a college sweatshirt, holding a bouquet of flowers. I'd come to visit during spring break. When Mrs. Parker opened the door, she laughed in surprise. "Lucas, look at you, you're taller." "College food," I joked. "Maybe too many burgers." She laughed and invited me in. Ethan was working out of state now, so it was just us again. We talked for hours, about my studies, about life, about how time had flown by. Before I left, she said something that made my throat tighten. "I always knew you'd do something meaningful, Lucas. You just needed someone to remind you that you could." Driving home that night, I realized what she truly meant. Sometimes, the people who change our lives the most aren't the ones who shout the loudest or make grand gestures. They're the ones who simply open the door when you need it most, and remind you that you still have a future worth walking into. And for me, that door opened on a quiet summer afternoon, by my best friend's mom. It really did change everything.